Good afternoon, everyone. Rick Garcia, G12 Communications and Everything Teams Phone Live, coming at you from Sammamish, Washington. For those of you that don't know, that's just outside Redmond. We're going to talk about Microsoft Teams today, so that's pretty cool. Brandon Bradley, what's going on, buddy?
Oh man, I feel like I live in Washington. It's about as gloomy as it can get here, which is not normal for Denver, Colorado.
Not normal. Well, today is a cool episode. We've got Mr. Randy Chapman joining us. Randy, where are you coming at us from?
I'm in sunny Rochester in the United Kingdom, the county of Kent. It's kind of the southeast-ish, parallel with the M25 and London, about 50 miles from London, basically.
You know, there's a whole big old thing going on in the UK. Is it next week? Isn't there? There's a lot going on next week with as it relates to the communications industry and Teams and all that. What's going on out there?
Yeah, so I'm one of the co-organizers of a conference called Commsverse. It's a Microsoft Teams focused community conference run by myself, Mark Vale, and Martin Bohm. This is I guess it's officially our fourth year, but it's our third year in person. First year was a washout because of COVID and all that. We ended up doing it as a 3-day and night virtual event. But yeah, third year in person, and we've broken all the records. We've sold out the initial batch of tickets and added 2 further batches of tickets and sold those out. And now the venue said nope, no more. So
that's amazing.
That's
amazing. Yeah.
We're going to have like 700 people there.
Oh, that's insane.
For a community conference. We're scared.
That's fantastic. Well, you know, we attended Comms V Next,
that's right? That's where we met, yeah.
In Denver last year, or this year. And what an amazing event that was. It was just really cool to hop into the community, meet everyone, say hello, make some new friends, learn a ton. And if anyone attended Comms V Next and now Commsverse, what an environment to be inundated in if you're a part of, you know, running Microsoft Teams or an organization looking at deploying Teams, or if you've got any sort of affiliation. It's such a great event to go to. So that's very cool. 700. Did you say 700? Is that's
close to 700 we're going to have there. Yeah.
That's insane. Well, you know, today we were on with a partner of ours, Luware. All right. So contact center for Microsoft Teams, G12 Communications and Luware. Stay tuned for the press release, everyone, because it's official. We are we're just tied at the hip now from a partnership perspective. So it's going to be pretty interesting. Our customers are going to be very, very excited. But we were going back and forth with Luware, and they're like, "Hey guys, we're at Commsverse next week. We've got a lot of things going on, so don't book us for too many installs next week." So that was pretty cool. I was like, "All right, they're headed to Commsverse." All right. Well, there's a lot going on in the Teams ecosystem, Randy. And Randy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? I mean, the show, we got the co-organizer of the show, Commsverse. But why don't you give us a little background on you, Randy? I know you run a very, very popular blog, and so we're excited to have you on.
Yeah, so my personal brand is UC Status. You'll find my blog, ucstatus.com, youtube.com/UC Status. I've got a podcast, which is, of course, branded UC Status. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. We just recorded this afternoon, episode 51, which I think we're about two and a bit years in, really, doing it. So, yeah, we've got some really good success with that. Have a lot of fun. And I work for Logitech as a solutions engineer. I've been there about 14 months, focusing on, I guess, meeting room tech is the biggest thing that I do, but obviously Logitech being around for 40 years, mice, keyboards, headsets, webcams, the lot, basically. I have to kind of help customers with all that, but mostly it's Teams stuff that I'm there for. Obviously, I touch on the other platforms like Zoom, all those kind of things.
Not on this call. We don't do that on this call, Randy.
Have to be kind of agnostic. I'll put $1 in the swear jar. That's kind of me. I've been in the industry for 25 years or so. I counted up the other day, since first touching as an admin Microsoft UC, it's about 18 years.
Well, it's come a long way. I ask this question pretty often. For those looking at, or for those that were not part of the Microsoft sort of ecosystem for a long time, if not, you weren't part of the Skype for Business and things like that. It's, I think to myself, what Teams is my first engagement with Microsoft that's really significant, right? I mean,
Okay.
as a SIP trunking provider, in 2014, we did the certification into Link and OC, I think it was called OC something at the time or something like that.
OCS, yeah.
Yes, OCS. And so we did SIP trunking into that, but that never really, we didn't find sort of a lot of traction in that space for a long time. And so I've got to imagine now, as a long time person in that space, you kind of got to be going, yes, we've been preaching Microsoft. We have been, we've had the Kool-Aid but now Teams is winning. Like Teams is just winning. So it's got to feel pretty good that every bit of information that you've kind of accumulated over the years is just applicable now. And you're the expert. You're an industry expert in the space. What do you think? It's pretty interesting.
It is pretty interesting. I mean, all the things that I've had to collect over the years, as you said, is a bit of a snowball effect. Everything from, all the Microsoft UC stuff, from Messenger way back then, telephony. I've got a background in telephony as well, so obviously all that kind of resonates as well. A bit of Avaya, LG phone systems, and a few other bits, and all the stuff that you had to do to get Link going and Skype for Business subsequently. Really, most of that stuff is left in the bank, because really what's Teams? It's a website and some PowerShell.
Yeah. No, exactly. Right. It's Brandon. What do you think? I mean, when was your first engagement with Microsoft?
I mean, it's probably been 5-6 years ago. But
you did more on the contact center side. Yeah.
Yeah. More contact center integration work with Skype for Business. And then in the later years, Teams, helping clients integrate their Teams telephony or their Microsoft telephony solution into contact centers.
All right. Well, Randy, we just threw together a quick deck just to kind of guide us on a few items, just to walk through what's new in Microsoft, what's going on. Big call out here really quickly. It's 300 million active users now on a daily basis of Microsoft Teams, which is just astonishing. I mean, it's, from a business productivity tool, we obviously we see this every single day. Organizations take down Teams, and not just Teams, but Teams Phone, right? Because it is what we like to call the very beginning of business process automation. So it's exciting to see the opportunity grow as a provider into Teams, see the opportunity grow to 300 million active daily users. One thing that I think, Randy, you may have some familiarity with, some deeper knowledge on, is the Android 12 Teams, Microsoft Teams room. Are you pretty tight with that? Where meeting rooms are not something we do a lot of, right? We typically don't sell meeting room gear at G12 Communications, so we don't do a lot of. We typically rely on outsourced support for meeting rooms, and so. What does that mean? What's the Android software? What does it mean? And what's the big deal about that?
So the Android operating system that runs Microsoft Teams rooms is called Device Administrator. It's kind of the other Android. You got Android Enterprise, which runs your phones and your tablets and things like that. Then you got Device Administrator, which some consider legacy. It's actually in the Microsoft docs that it says that some consider legacy. I think they just remove that because it kind of takes down some stigma. But effectively what DA is a scaffolding with which to hang your own operating system. So at Logitech, we call our operating system Collab OS. Neat will have something probably called Neat OS, I'm just guessing, Poly OS, and so forth and so on. Everybody that does an Android flavor will have their operating system on top of that. And really, you shouldn't have to worry about necessarily the version of Android, because it's so bare bones. Again, there's barely anything there. And it's secured to the absolute nines as well. Everything that should be removed is removed. You don't have any access to Google services, the App Store. You can't sideload apps or anything like that. So really, it shouldn't be that important what it is. However, Microsoft called it out about 18 months ago in a lovely article, basically giving a timeline for when different versions of Android would be out of support. And at the time, I think Android 7, 8, kind of 9 was in the mainstay. really. And everybody was in a race to try and figure out whether their devices could actually run a later operating system somewhere on even as old as 4 version of Android. Anyway, so most of the devices that are out there will run Android 10. And I think there's some that are upcoming that will run Android 11. But I think there's one vendor in particular that decided to come out the gate, having done not a lot with Android, and just skipped ahead and gone to Android 12.
All right. One vendor. We won't identify that one vendor.
Oh, we can. I mean,
I don't know who
you can Google it. It's Audio Codes. They decided to go with their new batch of devices. They announced a few months ago at, I think it's probably Enterprise Connect. They announced them, and they announced that like 4 or 5 devices or 6 devices they've actually got. Some of which will be at Commonsverse, no doubt, are all going to hit the ground running on Android 12. There's probably another one that I'm forgetting. I don't know yet.
Well, I do want to do a quick call out to the bullets that we have for the May update. Even though we've passed May, but this is what we're showing today. Empowering cloud. So there's a little logo down there, guys. You can see the EC down there. If you're an administrator in Microsoft Teams, if you're being tasked with learning about Microsoft Teams and understanding it for your organization, head over to empowering.cloud and learn everything that you need to know about running Teams phone service. Wow, that's I was almost a commercial.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wow,
You're gonna get hired.
That's not paid sponsorship, anything. I'm like, that's pretty funny.
I was gonna call out one other thing that's not on here that I think our listeners, viewers would be interested in, and that's the Teams Premium availability now for getting that next generation AI integrated into Teams from a Microsoft perspective.
Is that the preview into Copilot? Is that what that is? If you've got Premium, you get.
Well, it's not. No, it's Premium gives you I can't remember the terminology. Maybe Randy, where like you get on a meeting and now Premium, what it does is it uses AI to
the recap.
Recap your meetings, organize it in a way that if you miss a meeting, you don't have to necessarily watch the whole recording. And I think right now it just came out and they're offering it at, I think it's about $7 a user right now for the kind of, I don't know if you call it early access, but definitely worth checking out if people are interested.
Yeah, there's a lot of really great features in Premium. I mean, it's almost a rebrand, I think, of the advanced communications SKU that was announced a year ago, to a lot of controversy, but there's some really kind of cool stuff in there. The meeting recap stuff. There's actually 2 versions of it. There's a free one which kind of gives you the transcript and a little bit, kind of a peek in there. You can see the recording and whatnot. And then the premium one goes in and gives you real insights of who joined when, kind of the sentiment of the meeting, and you can go and ask it questions about sort of tasks and stuff. And you need premium for that. That's going to be really popular. It means you don't have to attend any meetings. You just have to have it recorded.
Look forward to that.
And basically you just ask Copilot to give you a recap of what went on.
Is it astonishing to you, Randy, the amount of productivity that like the speed at which Microsoft is deploying artificial intelligence and advanced services into Teams and Teams Phone? It's to me, it's astonishing the productivity value that you're able to see with real world tools. It's like there's like 1,000, tens of thousands, probably AI startups at this point, right? That do a little bit here and do a little bit there. And businesses from a product and sales perspective and product and marketing perspective, businesses aren't going to be able to go, oh, that's something I could use. Let me just adopt this right here and gain full productivity of anything. They're just not. They're too busy running their business. They're not going to be able to identify stuff. But Microsoft, right, in kind of narrowing that into their ecosystem and into Teams and Teams Phone and different components like that, they're really making the tools available to make you a very productive, organization. To me, it's just astonishing.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it's Microsoft 365 now. It was Office 365 for a while. Before all that, years ago, 15 years ago plus, it was called BPOS, Business Productivity. I'm gonna guess operating system. It could be something sweet. Anyway,
Right.
but business productivity, that was what it was all about. It was Exchange Online. That was pretty much what it did. And I think there was SkyDrive, which is now OneDrive. But it's amazing how far the product has gone. And it's not just about selling licenses. It is genuinely about, making, what you do better. You think about Word, Office, that kind of stuff. You could write a letter. You could pick up a pencil or whatever and some paper. Who wants to do that? You're going to do it in Word. You could make a table with some rulers and all that kind of stuff. No, you can have a spreadsheet, aren't you? All that kind of stuff. It's about making you more productive. It's great.
Yeah, and I would imagine this, the Teams Premium is probably just, the very beginning of their whole office productivity. If I'm imagining, I'm thinking, man, there's a day probably coming when I'm in Excel maybe, and I'm working on something, and I've got a tab with AI sitting right there in Excel, and I can just ask it to do some formula or some calculation or some format for me.
Graph, anything.
Just reaches in and does it. How many times do you have to Google to figure out how to do, the X, whatever equals whatever kind of formulas and stuff? You always forget. All the time. Yep.
It's like, hey, awesome. Copilot.
Do this.
Tell me what I forgot.
Exactly. I forgot. So I want to go back to the BPOS thing, just because it's interesting when we do when our sales organization does demos, and they're working with Teams Phone clients or looking to add Teams Phone clients. It's it's some of the words I hear coming out of folks are it's like it is the business operating system now, right? Teams has become the business operating system, right? Where Windows is your PC operating system. Teams has become the business operating system, and that's interesting because it's exactly what they envisioned years ago, right? In BPOS as an example has materialized, and now you see productivity kind of hitting in all sorts of ways, and again focused on the business, focused on the enterprise, making you a more productive employee. So that's pretty cool stuff. Let's hit the next slide because that's got some interesting stuff right there. Copilot. Have you used this in preview yet, Randy?
I haven't, no. I mean, I've seen a lot of demos on it and things in Summit and wherever, but super excited about it.
It's an invitation only.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think right now it's a little harder to get in unless you know people.
Yeah. I'm in. I've got access to it.
No,
I'm just kidding.
I was going to raise my BS flag.
You're like, what? You don't even
say, let me in. I know Rick.
It's because I live in Sammamish. I'm right next to headquarters there. I sent a note over to Satya and I said, Satya, I need access to this Copilot thing. We're going to sell it.
I heard he responded, who are you?
Yeah. You're not supposed to say that. That's scary. He's going to be on the show. Everyone stay tuned. Satya's coming to the show at the end of the year, but he's coming to the show. We're going to ask him one day.
I'm sending this link to him after it's done.
We're getting to episode 50, and then we're going to ask him episode 50 to come on and let's talk about where are you taking Microsoft? All right, let's talk about phone for just a second, Randy, because this is everything Teams Phone Live. Because obviously we've got lots of interest in the phone system. We see it here in the U.S. What's always intrigued me about Teams Phone and even Skype for Business, it's so popular in Europe, right? Yeah. But here in the States, it really. It never was. I don't think, right, as much as it was in Europe. In Europe, you guys always seem to be a couple of years ahead of us, maybe even a bit more than a couple of years ahead of us when it comes to communications in the enterprise space and in the consumer space, to be frank, right? It's always just a bit ahead. And so being able to go, pop over back and forth to London, let's say, and work with organizations and people that are in Europe, it gives us a good sort of basis of, I guess, where we want to go in the US, right? And particularly G12 communications, where we want to go and how we want to provide services, because it is a bit different here. I think in Europe, it seems to be a lot of hands-on organizations. And by hands-on, I mean, they're taking control of their infrastructure. They're taking control of their systems. They're running it. It's granular in terms of what they purchase and how they purchase it, right? Whereas I think the US is like, hey, it's like a drive-through here. We want something easy. We want it easy. Like tie it up in a little bow, and hand it to me on a platter. I want it all taken care of. And it's really guided. That's been the guiding principle of our Teams Phone sort of deployment stuff. So Teams Phone, here's a question for you then. what do you see? How do you see the acceleration of Teams Phone on your side of the pond versus, well, not versus here? We'll tell you about the US stuff, but what's the adoption been like for Teams Phone in Europe? And are you just taking it down at a rapid pace? What does it feel like there?
I mean, it's enormous. I haven't always worked for a vendor. I've worked for resellers and partners before, for the last 10 or 15 years, and Skype for Business and Link Phone before that, and then as soon as kind of Teams had the direct routing. And I guess calling plans initially, but really it was the direct routing and direct routing, however you want to say it, depending on which day of the week it is. Anyway, all of that once that became a thing, it's the same message. You're already paying for M365. You're already getting Teams for free. If you've got an E5, you've already got phone system. Or if you don't have E5, you're an E3, E1. Just add a small SKU and add on phone system. It's just a real no-brainer. It really means that you don't have to have that PBX in the cupboard anymore. You don't have to have cloud things and sort of things in data centers and all that disaster recovery. It just it was easy to convince people that cloud telephony was the way to go, and it was already using, as you said, the business operating system. They're using it for the chat. They're using it for their documents and those sort of things, plus all the messaging and Teams and channels and apps and those sort of things. Why not put a dial pad in there, plug a headset in, and away you go? And I guess it was really accelerated. I mean, I was talking about this on another recording I did earlier about video. We've said for 10 years that video is pervasive, and really we were just lying to ourselves, because it never was until everybody got sent home, and people craved that face-to-face communication. The only way they could get it was to go to Argos or go to Amazon or whatever and buy any webcam they can get a hold of, so people could see their faces, and that sort of thing. But yeah, Microsoft built it, and people came. I mean, I've personally worked on migrations that were sort of hundreds of thousands of users into Teams. It's enormous, and as you said, you can wrap it in a bow and make it really easy for people, because you can make Teams seem like a dark art. I said it earlier in the call, all the stuff that I had to learn, all those different things that I learned for Link and OCS and Skype for Business and whatever, it's all gone now. It's just a website and some PowerShell, but it is a lot more than that. And you can really, really wrap it in a bow. And there's so many ways to get voice into Teams now. And obviously, you do trunking for direct routing. Operator Connect is a thing. You got Operator Connect Mobile coming, and obviously calling plans are there. As a thing. I'm not sure how well adopted that is, but
yeah, it is pretty well adopted. I mean, here in the US, I mean, people look at it and go, okay, we'll take Microsoft, we'll take Microsoft, right? And obviously, the Microsoft had has tons of partners, and the partners were deploying direct routing, right? So they deploy SBCs. They connect up to a customer's either existing PBX, because there's still a little bit of fear about, hey, let's not take it all out. We still need physical handsets, because Teams can't do physical handsets. Wrong. Teams does physical handsets really, really well. And so, there was that sort of initial jump onto Teams. My thought though about, I want to skip that for just a second, because it seems to me like Microsoft started at the enterprise level. Like, here's at the enterprise level, let's go get these hundreds of thousands of users. And, whereas let's take the normal UC route. UC started off in the SMB space and kind of got bigger and bigger as more people adopted per user pricing, as an example. Whereas Microsoft just started right at the top with the enterprise, because they've got obviously access into all those organizations, right? So they took down masses, lines in the masses. And now we even see it pushing down. Brandon sent me a note earlier today, and now we even see it pushing down past the SME, the small to mid enterprise, into even into the SMB. And what I think is missing here in the US, and I'm curious if there are organizations that produce this in Europe, but what's missing here in the US, and kind of a role that we fill, is really making it simple for organizations, right? Hitting that easy button for an organization, because like you said, there's 4 different ways people can get into Microsoft Teams voice, right? That's whether it's the calling plans, the direct routing, the mobile, the Operator Connect. So a lot of different ways to get into Teams. And so inherently it seems like it's complex, right? When you go, if I just navigated over to, let's just say, a competitor's website, well, I can just buy it, everything right here. It's the dial tone, it's this, it's that, and I just hear my users, let me buy it. Well, Microsoft's a bit more complex in that, people don't, people look at the different parts of it. And partly I think it's because Microsoft had to go create that market. They had to go say, okay, we need to provide the services so people can get going on phone, right? Let's go provide a way for our partners to connect in existing telephony. And then let's go ahead and create a way for people just to take down service from us. So they became a service provider with calling plans, right? Really
in a few countries,
the market. Yeah, to make the market in a few countries. Now I feel like they're looking at it going, hey guys, we prefer you work with partners because partners can do that whole bring the different, components together. There may be a few extra pieces that you need. Faxing's a big one that we see all the time. Text
SMS,
messaging. Exactly. So we see those components all the time. So now when we kind of bundle those in for an organization, now we make it simple. It's really interesting because we've made Teams almost like our own product now. Yeah. Right. So it's really fun. It's just a really fun solution, and just to see the business productivity components in there that customers get out of the box, integration into Salesforce or a whole plethora of CRMs and applications like Zendesk, for example. Right. So there's so much productivity built into this thing right out of the box. It's almost, this is I don't know if this is an Americanism here, but Brandy, I'm going to say it's the best thing since sliced bread. Like it is. Bread, I've been in the phone business for 25 years. This is the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah. Think about Teams telephony though. Is all the consultants pretended for a long time that it was really, really kind of hard to do, and they charged massive piles of money for consultancy. And what did the pandemic teach us? That people had to go and take these 2-year projects that they were planning on this big migration and do it in a weekend. So they threw out the book. They got a couple of Post-it notes and some crayons, and they just figured out how to do it. And they did it in a weekend. I was on a panel at one of the UK shows, and I was trying to argue against these IT teams that had to do that, and I couldn't come up with a valid argument. So if they can figure out how to do it themselves, and then there's all these other companies, said PowerShell, this is Graph API, and all these other APIs that make spinning up Teams and doing voice all really easy. So you can build stuff that helps people get there and actually get to Teams really quickly. So yeah, it's just going to keep going.
It is. It's pretty exciting, and that's what that you're absolutely right. Though there's tools out to help. I mean, and in organizations, you'd be surprised the number of organizations that come to us directly, right? Not through a consultant, not through a technical person, but they come to us directly and go, they almost get there. They can almost get to the end line, right? So, but they've made it 85% of the way. So they're almost there. And so what's interesting is that you did have the consultants that charge enormous amounts of money so that they could go configure a Teams phone system for you and deploy a Teams phone system for you. Man, we do that stuff all day long, like all day and Sunday. It's like we're cranking out users left and right. It's like an organization. What's beautiful about Teams, and Brandon, you can attest to this, or he runs the team. It's so cool to see you deploy a solution in like a week. Like it's just like here you go. If there's if you're not shipping any devices out, and it's like somebody needs numbers, we can put new numbers in there. We can port numbers in about 5 days. So it's so exciting to see people go from zero to to hero on Microsoft Teams Phone and have it done in a week, 2 weeks, right? It's pretty phenomenal, and that's a testament to kind of the platform that Microsoft has built, right? They've made it that easy.
I think dial tone is just the beginning, though, isn't it? Sorry, Brandon, but you can also add on contact center. You spoke about call recording. There's other things you can layer onto it to make it even better.
Oh, let's get Brandon's comment on that, but we're going to hop right into the app discussion because that's near and dear to my heart. So, Brandon, what were you going to say? That's all
I was just going to say Microsoft. Two things, right? I kind of want to step back to kind of the user adoption. From my perspective, I think Teams or Microsoft has made Teams Phone really intuitive. But I think what we see is it might be really intuitive until you bring a legacy telephony guy in and he has to or she has to make that shift in. You're no longer talking about necessarily traditional telephony in the like here's your extension, and
It's not
here's
TDM anymore, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much about the identity, right? You're now activating service on an identity. And I think that's, at least it may be here in the United States, it seems like that's where the struggle is at right now, is making that correlation of, it's identity-based services. No longer is it just this system that sits off to the side and ties into everything else. It's just inherent to your identity.
That's a big one. That's a big one for tech guys to learn here in the States, right? So here, let me speak directly to these guys. If you run a Cisco phone system, if you run a Mitel phone system, if you run any of those like NEC, if you run a Avaya, if you run a legacy phone system, Teams is that easy. And if you're choosing to host, and this might cause some negative comments here in a second here. If you're choosing to host your own phone system, it's saying that you can host like basically you're saying, I can host a phone system better than Microsoft can host a phone system. And Microsoft has built in all this sort of underlying infrastructure to not data center infrastructure, but the coding and all the different components to make it as simple as it is. It really is that simple, everyone. Like, it really is that simple. So we had a guest from Microsoft on not too long ago, actually last week and the week before, I think. Jason was on with us, and one of his comments was, if you're running a system today, you get an opportunity to go learn new things for your career, because it's not going to take you the time to manage a Microsoft phone system that it took you to manage a Cisco phone system or an Avaya phone system, right? And we talked about the different applications and the different things that you can add on, Randy. So let's get into the apps thing right here, because it does. Yeah. It's Power Automate, and maybe, Randy, you can do a better job of explaining Power Automate in a second for us, but the different things like Contact Center and the SMS applications and things like that. Randy, why don't you start off with Power Automate? Because to me, I look at that and I go, wow, that's pretty interesting, because now I can start to automate business process, and that makes it really compelling. This is not just a phone system. This is a launch pad for productivity in my business. And what does that mean to me? It means higher, revenue generation, cost savings, right? All sorts of different, economic impacts for the business. So why don't you talk about Power Automate for a second?
Yeah. So Power Automate is part of the Power Platform. It's all about basically giving people the tools with which to make tools that help the business become productive. Citizen developer is kind of the term we bandy about over here. Building stuff, but Power Automate was originally called Flow, and really it's like a Microsoft version of if this then that, or IFTTT, if you know what that is. So you have a connector, you say, if this happens, then I want to produce Y, Z, and whatever else, right? And you can get really, really complex with it. You can take an email in, and when that email comes in, take the subject, take the body, take the the people that send it to you, and assign it to a help desk or something. You can make your own help desk application just from an email coming in by dissecting it and then putting it into some sort of database. There's so many really, really cool things you can do with it. I mean, there's not much more to say about it.
Is it wrong? Oh, go ahead, Brandon.
I was going to say, I'll give you a real world example of how we're using it today. And Rick, you may not even know this because, I keep you out of technology, but one way we do this is, and this is a real world, like it happens today in our systems, is we've got a whole ton of application, and services that sit out, and they could be hosted in Azure, they could be in our data centers. But we identified a list of really critical things that we really need to know about. And it could be a server, maybe a hard disk fails, maybe it loses power. And we're using Automate to take that data and push it into a Teams notification, because what if I'm not at my desk? What if I'm down at the pub? Or, what if I'm doing something else? Or what if my team is not paying attention to the alarm panel, right? Everyone has Teams on their phone, I assume, if you're using Teams for work. And so now I can be sitting down at that pub or wherever, and boom, I get that alert, and it tells me I got to get a hold of someone because I gotta take action on this. So we've turned Teams into somewhat of a critical alerting system for us for really mission critical applications and services, and super simple to do.
Yeah.
Is it wrong to think of it as for, and I'm just making this for people that aren't Microsoft sort of guys and gals, and they are, seeing commercials out there, or I see ads for Zapier all day long. Is it wrong to compare it to like a Zapier? Like, let's connect up APIs, let's connect up, sort of that sort of flow that you can connect up. Is it relatively the same as that, where it's, if I've got, something that comes in and I want to do something with that information, maybe it's an email ticket, and I automatically open up my Zendesk ticket and send a Teams message to the right group so that they can look at that, ticket and those sorts of things. It seems to be like that. There's some parallels there between like a Zapier and a Power Automate.
Yeah, and that's just on the inbound side. Imagine then, coding a button and actually making an app. So a Power app that actually calls up a function which is written in Power Automate to make it go and do stuff. Things like approvals that we take it for granted. It's built into Teams now, but you could actually go and build all that yourself before by, a simple form, a send button, and it would go through the motions and go around the houses until you get sign offs on things. You can absolutely build that in Power Apps and Power Automate and stuff. But now Microsoft just gave it to us.
I love it. That's fantastic. Let's talk about, so there's Power Automate, and let's talk about ACS, because this is one of my favorite topics right now, Azure Communication Services. And obviously we tie it to, and there's components of it in our contact center solution in Luware. So they serve essentially as a gateway for ACS for us, right? And the Interact module they've got. So let's talk about the capabilities of Azure Communication Services. It's like the possibilities are endless, but let's talk about some real world examples that you've seen, Randy, Azure Communication Service being being used out there.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the big one that I was very familiar with. I was selling Luware for a number of years. They really kind of took it and run with it rather than building an on-prem tool or retooling something they already had. They just built it from the API side because they knew that Microsoft wanted to kind of go that way. And it took them a little while to get there with, all the features that the other people were doing, but, it really paid off. I've seen the Luware stuff these days, and it's miles away from where it was before. Another one, Landis, they do another attendant console, and they have a contact center. It's all built on ACS as well. So contact center vendors, people that do attendant consoles, some call recording. You can do all kinds of stuff with ACS. I mean, we talk about all these analogies. You said Zapier for Power Automate. Well, I mean, was it Twilio?
Twilio, yeah.
Yeah, that's ACS basically,
Yeah. So this is where like I feel like there's a gap right here, and you can tell me what you think about this from a gap perspective. Here's where I see a gap in this stuff. In the US, and I remember as Bill Gates sort of making this prediction, I don't know, 15 years ago, that we're no longer going to need phone numbers anymore, right? At some point, we're gonna do away with phone numbers, right? And now I look at, there's ACS out there, and this is what's interesting to me is you can basically turn your Teams functionality outward, right? And have it on a website now. And one day I envision, if you're a developer out there, here's what I envision one day. I envision that you could have, the Teams logo on your website, and obviously use that as your communication tool to any business out there. If you're Googling a business as an example, no longer do you need the phone number to come up with the business or anything like that. Or, you've got the ability to just click on connect and you're connecting via Teams. Now there's a lot of different ways to do that. There's a lot of different interfaces to work on and to bring in to make it sort of a fully functioning sort of application. But I see a day in the future where there's a very cool application where you can really start to communicate and put this out on business. Now in Europe, you guys have WhatsApp quite prevalent on business websites. Yep. You see the WhatsApp logo on there. In the States, we don't use WhatsApp as much as around the world. I do. Brandon does. We use WhatsApp quite frequently. But having that same sort of model where you've got the Teams logo sitting on every single website, so every business that uses Teams can begin to migrate to some sort of direct connectivity to their customers from their website, right? So whether that be voice, video, chat. And to me, what makes that interesting is that it is, engaging for it's the customer journey, right? It's engaging for the client. The other day I had to change a hotel reservation in Vancouver, British Columbia. And I was like, I normally like to call because I'm an old guy and I like to, I'm in the phone business too. So I really like to use the phone. And I thought, let me just try this whole chat thing, So I go to the website and I chat, and literally in a minute, my reservation was changed. My room was extended. And I was like, wow, that was pretty darn cool. And so from a customer journey perspective, they did a really good job. I can say what hotel it was, but they did a really good job. It's Fairmont. They did a really good job. So that was really cool. And unexpected, right? It was unexpected. And so I dream about, this is crazy. This is what I actually dream about. I dream about an environment where businesses can really connect with their customers, because for the good businesses out there, that's what they want. They want to treat their customers really well. They want their customers to have the best experience, right? They want to keep them for long term. It just plays right into that sort of, that philosophy.
Yeah. But you think they want to keep them for a long time, but we've all been in call center hell where you can phone up and you're in a queue listening to somebody's rusty keyboard or something. And you're there for hours and hours, and you're the next caller, and they're just making that up, aren't they? And then when you get on the phone to them, you just get bounced around the houses until you finally get cut off. It's horrible. I will avoid buying from businesses that don't have a chat bot or a chat kind of tool on the website. I'd love to see that, sort of, I'm investigating this new broadband package. Right. Let's go to the website. Oh, they don't have a chat thing. No, I have to phone them to get service. Nope. Sorry. Could be the best service in the world, the best broadband in the world, the cheapest thing going. But if I have to phone them to get anything done,
you wouldn't do it. Yeah, Brandon, what's your first mode of communication whenever you're looking at engaging with a business?
For me, I don't even know if it's chat. I think it's a certain level of automation, and it's not even that I'm looking for the automation. It's more about the intuitiveness of the business, right? I go to their website, look at, say, an Amazon or even Google from like their store perspective, or their services that you pay for. You don't chat with anyone. You don't talk to anybody. No. You literally just click buttons and the service works.
Yeah.
And very rarely do you need to contact them, if ever. And that's, I think most people, they don't recognize that that's what they're looking for when they're shopping around. And then from there, if I have to contact my preference, and Rick, you and I chatted about this the other day, I refuse to get on a call. I work for a service provider, and I refuse to use the phone. Because I know that, right? It's not a pleasant experience, and it's a waste of time in my mind. I've got better things in life to do than sit on hold.
Yeah, there are contact centers that can actually put you in a virtual queue and call you back when it was supposed to be answered anyway. Do we trust that that's actually a thing? Having seen behind the scenes, it is actually, there's a timer. It's estimating the amount of time it would have taken to kind of get you. So it's, within 4 or 5 minutes, something like that, probably. Yeah. And it does actually work.
I won't mention one of my internet service providers because I actually don't like them, but they actually offer an SMS service. And I've had to, like, when I switch out my cable modem, I've had to obviously have to contact them to, do all that stuff. And I will say the one thing they did well is they just have a code that you text. And now I'm not even going to find their app. I'm not trying to find a chat button. I'm not trying to, I can just natively on my device text with them, and, 3 texts later, I had the link I needed and I was good to go. So that would be, for me, that's my preference, is least your resistance to entry for support.
Yeah. So if you went to a website, if you had to go to their support, let's just say, if you had to go to support and you're like, I'm going to go look up support for whoever my internet provider is, and they had the button right there for you to chat, are you saying that you'd still go look for a number to text them, or
no.
The icon to text? Is that what you prefer?
No, I'll chat with them, like same internet service provider, like every cable company in America. They like to jack your prices up every 12 months. And so just the other day, I chatted with them and I said, I'm either done being your customer, or you're going to change this. And it was, again, probably a 3-minute chat dialogue, and they had bumped my service plan up and lowered my cost. So again, right, very, very convenient.
It's what's interesting about this is, I mean, like we should just call Microsoft, like the productivity kings or something, because this is what's interesting about this is, they're creating tools so that enterprises and businesses and small businesses can be more productive, right? The employees can be more productive, but you see the same thing on the consumer side where, those functions, ACS, those tools, those same tools are being used to make you a more productive consumer. Right. I mean, like you're definitely a more productive consumer when you get to engage quickly and efficiently. You're becoming a more productive consumer. I mean, does that mean you're going to spend more money? Maybe.
Well, Amazon is a classic example. I mean,
perfect. Yep.
I'm on the Amazon app all the time, and the classic line in my house is, "What did you order now?" When another Amazon box or another stack of Amazon boxes turns up at the door, and it's I don't just save up a bunch of stuff, put them in the basket, and then press purchase on Sunday every week. I just, if I want it and I think about it, I just buy it now. If there's a next day or a same day delivery, I might change it to that or whatever. And then an hour later, I might want something else. But they've made it so super slick, so super easy for me to go and buy stuff. I'm definitely spending more than I should. If it was really hard, I would never use it.
Yeah, they've created a Randy. I don't know if you guys had this in your, but the slip and slide. You remember the slip and slide, the yellow? Okay, so they've made it a slip and slide for your wallet. It's the slide. It's the slide right on Amazon.
Don't have to go to the store.
That's
Don't
right.
have to wade through the friendly people, the greeters, or anything like that.
It's like what Netflix did to to Blockbuster, right? It's like you don't have to drive to the store and rent a movie anymore or anything like that. You just download it. Here you go, instant gratification.
Well, actually, Netflix started off as a tape or a DVD. They sent you in the mail. That's why it's called Netflix.
I completely forgot about that. Like how interesting is that? I completely forgot about that model. Where
there were actually physical media.
You had the sleeves, the real thin sleeves that they'd mail out. That's right.
you think about it, that they were thinking way ahead of their time. And I think, if we're going to pull this back to Microsoft, I think we see that beginning to happen with Microsoft, right? They're beginning to think way ahead of their competitors.
Yeah.
Their investment in OpenAI was genius. I mean, they literally caught Google with their pants down. And now they're light years ahead. And for businesses, for people listening, like the ability now to take Teams and expand its solutioning into your website, into your contact center, whichever direction you want to go, the flexibility is there. Very forward thinking.
Yeah.
The modularity of Teams is something that we chatted about on email not too long ago, Randy, and it's really the ability to embed different solutions for your organization and really, really kind of eke out every bit of productivity you can and really create that true sort of single interface or that whole business operating system, right? And that's what's interesting to me is that, you can bring and when I say embed into Teams, it's like, you can bring everything into Teams, right? Whether it's Epic, the healthcare integrations that Microsoft has done now with Epic and Cerner, being able to, for clinicians, extend the video out to their organizations, but it's all sitting on Teams. It's secure, right? Those are phenomenal applications that make your organization more productive and more efficient and using the same tech stack across the board. It makes everything just really, really efficient. And I can't say enough about it. We're just tickled here at G12 about it because this is what we live and breathe every single day. And when we deploy services, the customers that we deploy, they're so elated with clean, simple. They're like, wow, it's refreshing to them that it's simple. They can hop in, they understand the screen. The Microsoft interface isn't difficult to navigate, right? We can build in tools that are simple, like the text messaging, and people love that stuff. And it's cheaper, Randy. This is what's actually shocking, is that it's cheaper. And I'm showing this screen because it's getting a lot of publicity right now. It came out in December of 2022. We've been kind of kicking it around since February, I think, or January, February, we started kicking this around a little bit. and just kind of running our own sort of analysis for our customers and kind of saying, does this stand up? Is this all BS? This is contracted by Microsoft, right? The Forrester report. So you tend to take it with a grain of salt when it's sponsored by, the organization that it's benefiting. But we kind of stack these numbers up against our own customers, and we see this to be true. I mean, we see the total cost of ownership reduction of 45% for an enterprise customer. We're working on one now, I don't know, 3,000 or so users, right? And you look at that, and they're coming off of a cloud provider that I won't say their name, but they're coming off of a cloud provider, and they're literally going to pay 50% of what they were paying. And they're, obviously we all know that we're in the business that the productivity that they're going to gain out of this suite of services is far and away better than what they're experiencing today. And so the cost savings are just enormous, particularly if you're an E5 subscriber, as an example, and you've got it built in already. So here's what was surprising. Well, we talked about this a little bit earlier too. For the SMB, and this is where, stamping it out and making it easy for consumers to digest, for businesses to digest, right? This whole Teams phone, the total cost of ownership reduction was 82%. That's astonishing for an organization that's maybe you're a 50 user organization and you're used to paying, a couple of $1,000s a month for your support and phone service and maintenance and stuff like that. You've got all these different, components that you're being charged, and to reduce that by 82%, that's pretty impactful for an organization, right? I mean, 82% and the payback of under 6 months. So these stats have been true. So my point to all this whole thing about it is that we've run our existing customers. We know what they're paying. We activate customers when we can deliver service, and we look at this and we go, wow, they really do. These numbers really do stack up for customers. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty exciting.
And the cool thing is you don't have to talk anybody into Teams now. I mean, Microsoft have done all the selling for us. All you have to do is plug in, the Luwares of the world, or your, voice trunks, or, consulting services, support, SharePoint migrations, data migrations, cleansing. There's a lot of stuff you can wrap around Teams. They've made a vortex for people to just, make money off of for years and years, decades to come.
For those of you who buy our professional services, there's a lot of complex work that goes into this. Right?
There absolutely is. But what I'm saying is Microsoft have given us, the consultants of the world, a treat, a way to make money.
Yeah.
But and the other, and I think the other value that I don't think people even recognize is they might know they want to go to Teams. And I think, and Rick, you and I were chatting about this on maybe 2 or 3 podcasts ago. You've got Microsoft and their ecosystem, and naturally, if I'm paying for, say, Salesforce, or I'm paying for, some CRM tool, there's a high chance that CRM, that company, has already built an app for Teams as a plugin. So as an example, like for me, I'm running a few different applications today, and maybe that requires 3 or 4 different apps on my phone. But now I can plug that all into Teams and reduce my mobile footprint to a single app, where now I'm not trying to do this whole swivel chair between apps, and I'm not trying to figure out, like, if I have a ticket issue, or maybe it's a sales opportunity. I can take that phone call on Teams. I can come back into Teams, and I can look right into my plugins, and I never have to leave Teams, even though I might be dipping into Salesforce or whoever I'm using. And I think that right there, especially for people who are on the go, I don't think people realize how much advantage that brings to them.
Oh, I can tell you, like for me, I mean, if I log into, let's say, HubSpot, right? So my HubSpot, and having it all sort of single sign on, and it's like you log in and you're in your system. Where before I used to, if I logged into HubSpot on my mobile device separately, there was a login process. And if you're as secure as we are, when you've got multi-factor authentication, and if you've got, a single sign-on only, there's a couple of different verifications that we end up going through. So it takes a little while to pull through the data that you're looking for and get to where you want to get to. I mean, it's probably a 4 or 5 minute process. Whereas now you open Teams, it's sitting right there. You open up what you need to, and off you go. So it is pretty, intuitive and simple to do that, and does save people time. I think that was the way that they calculated the savings on this too. One of the components that they calculated here, Brandon, was, the time that organizations were saving from their increased productivity. And so they put a dollar associated with every hour that was saved, right? And then and extrapolated that over a week and then a month and things like that. So then that's how they calculated some of the savings. So you do see that increased productivity actually kind of come out with a dollar sign on it.
Yeah, I mean, there was a really good one back in the OCS and Link days. It was 30 minutes per person per day you could save just with one component of Link at the time, presence. Mm-hmm. You take presence for granted, that little light that tells you whether they're there at their desk and things like that. We kind of, it's synchronous and a little bit asynchronous teams. It's a little bit like Outlook, but a lot more like a chat tool. But in the old days, it was, if I wanted to phone Rick, I wanted to know whether that Rick is going to be there to answer the phone. And it wasn't, sort of, Brandon, is Rick near you? Or,
right.
You're phoning people, their colleagues around them or anything. I didn't have to guess. If it was green, that means go.
Mm-hmm. It's like peck and hunt, right? You're literally, you're calling, are you there? Are you there? Are you there? Are you there? Whereas you're right, though, presence is taken for granted, and but it's an enormous time saver, right? Mm-hmm. Because this person's available. I don't have to call Brandon. Brandon, I mean, we're on the phone quite a bit, or in Teams quite a bit with each other, and it's like, if I get out of a meeting and I've got a moment of availability, Brandon will go, boom, hey, can you chat? Yep, okay, great, and we make use of the gap that you have in meetings, right? Yeah. So again, productivity is off the charts. Randy, what would you say to organizations that were considering Microsoft Teams Phone, but maybe have not made the jump to Microsoft Teams Phone? You've seen all the different, opportunities out there for people to go this way or that way. What would you say to organizations out there?
I mean, if you're using Teams, it's a no-brainer. Basically, it's just taking, you said people connections. It's not about phoning numbers or extensions or anything. It is about connecting with people, and those people could be internal or external. But there are times where they're not using Teams. They're not using your technology. So Federation and things like that aren't going to get out of jail free for you. So you need to phone. It used to be called a telephone. No, it's still called a telephone number. Sometimes you do need to phone someone's telephone number. So, you're already using Teams. Teams can do telephony well. It is actually pretty inexpensive when you actually stack it up against that thing in your cupboard using electricity and stuff. So just go and do it. You have no excuses. It's in Europe. You said in the US, you're not adopters. In Europe, we are adopters in droves by the hundreds of thousands of users. It's crazy the amount of telephony over here. So be European for a day.
Yeah, I love it. Be European and adopt Teams Phone. I love it.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
there you go.
I'm also going to do the emoji. It's the thinking emoji with telephone number. Okay, that's going to be the next T-shirt, Brandon. That's the next T-shirt right there. What was that thing called before? As a telephone number. Yeah. I did like what you said, though. It's about connecting with people, right? It's about connecting internal and or external people. It's about connecting people, and that's kind of what makes this whole world go round, Randy. It's all about connecting with people, right? So I do like that analogy. It's about connecting with people in as efficient way as possible. So Brandon, what would you say to organizations looking to move to Teams?
Yeah, I'm just going to echo it. Do it, right? Stop spending so much time. This is the terminology I like to say is get away from analysis paralysis and just do it.
There you go. Well, gentlemen, we're at the top of the hour. I want to thank everyone who's watching. Appreciate you coming to the Everything Teams Phone live session here on LinkedIn and YouTube. Thank you for jumping on. Randy, I know it's late in the UK. I want to thank you very much for taking your time before the weekend to come and hang with us and chat with Brandon and I about Microsoft Teams Phone. Obviously, we're we're all in this sort of ecosystem that is Microsoft, and we really sort of are passionate about the things that we do, taking your extra time to blog and inform the consumer about, what's going on out there. And we're all sort of really passionate about this. So it's pretty fun to get your perspective and get some of your insights. So thank you so much for hanging with us. And,
thanks for having me anytime.
Absolutely. Brandon, anything else? Why don't you sign us off, Brandon?
No, I think this was a hopefully informative session for those maybe on the fence about Teams and its capabilities. So, Randy, appreciate your time. Hope you have a great weekend, and to our listeners, have a great weekend.
See you, everyone.
See you later.